Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back ranking all 11 movies in the Hellraiser franchise. Ranked is a new series presented to you by me and Jason from Horrific Nightmares JM. In this series, we will simply be sharing with you our rankings of various film franchises. By the way, they won't always necessarily be horror franchises either. And even though we will be covering the same franchises on the same days, our rankings will be different. So please be sure to check out Jason's video as well. Like with all of my other rankings, I will start with my least favorite and work my way to my favorite film in the franchise. This is not a scale of what I think are objectively the best films. They're just my personal favorites in order. I'm using the same criteria I use for franchise frenzy: nostalgia, rewatchability, and overall enjoyment. You don't have to agree with my list. This is just my personal opinion. For the first video in this new series, Jason and I have decided to go with one of our favorites. This is Hellraiser Ranked. In last place, my least favorite Hellraiser film is Hellraiser Judgment. This is the 10th movie in the franchise. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear. I don't dislike any of the films in this series. Hellraiser Judgment is just the one that I enjoy the least, for various reasons. First of all, I'm not a fan of the changes made to the Hellraiser mythos in this one. Since when is there an auditor, an assessor, and a jury? Then there are the cleaners and the whole angel aspect. It's one thing to expand upon an established story. I'm completely fine with that, but this just didn't work for me. I do, however, really like the murder mystery elements, and I love the ending. Although Hellraiser Judgment feels more like a work of fan fiction, this genuinely looks like a fan film to me. I do still like it, but it is my least favorite in the Hellraiser franchise. Up next, and this might come as a surprise to some of you, I have Hellraiser Bloodline. This is the 4th film in the franchise, and it was the last one to receive a theatrical release. Again, I don't dislike it by any means. In fact, I love Hellraiser Bloodline. For me, though, I do wish they stuck with the original plan. I almost prefer the work print version to the theatrical cut, despite the fact that the work print is unfinished. There are plenty of things I love about Hellraiser Bloodline, but the futuristic sci-fi portion isn't one of them. I much prefer the past and present storylines in Bloodline. Once again, I do love the ending, though. Next up is the Hellraiser sequel that took the biggest dip in my ranking this time around. Hellraiser Inferno. This is the 5th film in the franchise, and the one to feature the least amount of Pinhead. Despite having his shortest screen time in Inferno, I still love it. Craig Sheffer is a personal favorite actor of mine, ever since I first saw him in Nightbreed. The fact that he's the main character in this one definitely helps. I also love that this is basically a Hellraiser noir film. Maybe that's what pushes it this low, though. I think I need to be in the mood for a movie like that. Regardless, Hellraiser Inferno is pretty awesome. Hellraiser Deader comes in 8th place, and this is the 7th film in the franchise. Deader is also the Hellraiser movie that jumps around most in my ranking. Sometimes I watch it and think, yeah, this is probably one of my least favorites. Other times I watch it and think, wow, I love this. So instead of ranking it too low or too high, I think this is a good spot for it. I do think the storyline is really cool, and I like Carrie Wurrer as the main protagonist. I wish the Spike Cenobite had made the final cut though. That would have been cool to see on screen. The setting is awesome in Deader, and there are some memorable moments. I think about the toilet scene more often than I'd like to admit, and I think about the subway scenes as well. Naked Carrie also doesn't hurt, and ultimately I find it really impressive that they turned a script that wasn't originally a Hellraiser film into a Hellraiser film. It works. Released the exact same day as Hellraiser Deader, Hellraiser Hellworld is up next. This is the 8th film in the Hellraiser franchise, and it gets a little meta in this one. That's not a bad thing by any means. Again, it works. The cast is great in Hellworld. We get Catherine Winnick, Carrie Payton, Henry Cavill, Lance Henriksen, and of course, Doug Bradley, reprising his role as Pinhead. Unfortunately, this would be the last time he'd play the horror icon. Hellraiser Hellworld has the biggest slasher feel of them all. There is some good nudity in this one, and one hell of a massive twist. I do think it goes a little overboard with the false endings, but it's fine. Hellworld is a Hellraiser sequel I like more and more every time I watch it. This used to be at the absolute bottom of my Hellraiser ranking, but now it's at number 7. Next up, right in the middle at number 6, I have Hellraiser Revelations. This is the 9th film in the franchise, and easily the most hated universally by fans. This gets so much hate, it was one of the first movies Jason and I covered during our Positive Spin series. To me, this looks and feels like an old school Hellraiser. As much as I enjoy parts 5 through 8, they had their own feel to them. Revelations takes it back to that original trilogy, or quadrilogy. No, Doug Bradley does not play Pinhead, obviously, as you can see on the cover, but nowhere in this film does it state that it's supposed to be the same Pinhead. If you know anything about Hellraiser lore, you would know that there are multiple Pinheads. As a matter of fact, there is more than one Pinhead in this movie. So, for those of you who hate it simply because it's not Doug Bradley playing Pinhead, well, that's a silly excuse. I love that Revelations is partly, not completely, but partly a found footage film. There is some really good stuff in here that is shamefully overlooked by most. I'm not afraid to say I love Hellraiser Revelations, and I actually wish I could rank it higher. Hellraiser Hellseeker is in 5th place for me, and it's the 6th movie in the Hellraiser franchise. This one features the return of Kirsty Cotton. It also stars Mayhem himself, Dean Winters, as her husband Trevor. While we get some cool new Cenobites in this one, like we do in many of the others, it also includes the return of Chatterer. I remember that being a big deal at the time this was released, because Chatterer was always a fan favorite Cenobite. His last appearance prior to this Part 6 was in Part 2, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Hellseeker may do the best job of establishing a personal hell. As much as I love how it was done in Inferno, I think this did it even better. The way this one is edited makes you feel like you're right there with the character in that personal hell. It's confusing and disorienting, but I don't mean that as a negative. You almost feel the anxiety as if you're part of the movie. Hellseeker also has one of the best twists and endings in the entire franchise, in my opinion. Coming in at number 4, and it almost pains me to say that, is HELLRAISER 3, Hell on Earth. This was initially going to be 3rd place for me. I have a lot of nostalgia for this one. This was the first Hellraiser film I saw in theaters. That's one of my favorite, most memorable cinematic experiences. I remember being so excited to see this one because I was such a huge fan of the first 2 films. I literally had goosebumps walking into the theater. I'll never forget that day, and because of that, this one will always have a special place in my heart. In addition to that, Hell on Earth is a really, really fun film. It's probably the most fun of the Hellraiser movies. There's a campiness to it. The Cenobites are cheesy, but I love them. And this has a really good early 90s feel. I like the characters. I love the setting. It's great that we get some backstory on Pinhead. Even though I have it in 4th place, Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth will forever be one of my favorites. In 3rd place, which was initially going to be in 4th place, until Jason and I rewatched it in preparation for these rankings, is HELLRAISER from 2022. It's the 11th and final film of the franchise so far, and it's more of a reboot or requel than remake. It basically takes elements from the first 2 films, puts them together, and modernizes it. I gotta say, I was blown away by this that first night I watched it, and I continue to get blown away by it every time I revisit it. This is exactly how reboots should be made, and in my honest opinion, Hellraiser is genuinely scary. You cannot escape the Cenobites. You can't get away from them. And I think this Hellraiser film does the best job convincing us of that. No matter where you are, no matter where you go, they will find you and they will get you. I really love the story they went with for this reboot. I think it's absolutely brilliant. The new design of the Lament configuration is awesome, and the look of the new Cenobites is incredible. Like Revelations, this captures that old-school Hellraiser feel. And my God, the ending. We better get more of these. With Hellraiser 2022 being a combination of the first 2, it's only fitting to have it here at number 3. In 2nd place is the second Hellraiser film, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, the first sequel in this fantastic franchise. As a kid, this would have been number 1 for me. I always liked Hellbound more than the original Hellraiser growing up, even though I did love the original as well. In fact, this probably would have been in my top 3 or even top 2 favorite horror movies overall when I was young. I rented it on VHS countless times. I couldn't get enough. Through the years, though, I came to realize the original Hellraiser is the better film. Although, objectivity doesn't really play a role in these rankings. Not a major role, anyway. I consider it for sure. But regardless, I do now like Clive Barker's Hellraiser a bit more than Hellbound Hellraiser 2, which is why this sequel is in 2nd place. Come on, though. This one is set literally in hell. How cool is that? So yes, my number 1 favorite Hellraiser movie is Hellraiser. This was Clive Barker's directorial debut. He had no idea what he was doing, but somehow managed to make a horror masterpiece. There are films that fall into a category of which you forget how good they are until you rewatch them. Then there are those that fall into a different category. Movies you know are great, but then you watch them and realize they're even better than you remember. Hellraiser falls into the latter. No matter how many times I've watched it and know how great it is, it continues to impress me on each and every subsequent viewing. It truly is a horror movie masterpiece. 11 films later, this was the start to one of my all-time favorite horror franchises. So, there you have it, guys. My ranking of all 11 movies in the Hellraiser franchise. What do you think? Comment below and let me know. Don't forget, please be sure to check out Jason's video to see how he has Hellraiser Ranked. Also, feel free to suggest some film franchises you'd like for us to rank in the comment section. Which one will we rank next? Check back soon to find out. Until then, remember, physical media matters. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that thumbs up and be kind. Subscribe.